Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pichael with League of Items, and today we're going to look at what happened last night and what we think is going to happen tomorrow. Unfortunately, I was eliminated from the King of the Rift. Um, I had a Dom1 Gaming top esports stack with Sunning, so all the different parts of my team won. They just didn't have the highest kill totals. Um, I had Barrel as my support. That didn't help. Um, I Top esports was as chalky as I thought it was. I was trying to be a little bit different, and it didn't work out last night. I don't think it was a bad play, but it didn't work this time. So last night, G2 beat Machi. G2 had a big win in terms of a kill score, which is within the range of outcomes that was expected. Machi typically, when they win, is a little lower scoring. So I had some G2 in my lineups, but I didn't. I ended up not having any Machi, even though I intended to in the beginning. And what I decided basically was, like, even if Machi wins, the amount of times that they would pay off to be the primary stack seems pretty low. So I'm probably better off just betting on them on the sportsbook. So I had like a parlay with them and a bunch of favorites, just to see, like, just to have some action on the Machi outcome that I thought was possible. In the second game, Suning beat Team Liquid. There's absolutely no surprise there. People were very upset with Team Liquid, how they approached the game. I think it's just people having unrealistic expectations of, like, how they should be approaching the game. But I mean, Suning should beat Team Liquid 65-70% of the time easily, in my opinion, without taking specific drafts into consideration. Dom1 beat PSG Talon. Again, this is not a surprise at all. A lot of these groups are built in such a way that the teams that are good are great, and the teams that are bad are really bad relative to the great teams. JDG against Rogue. I did not pay close attention to this game. Like the fact that it's at 4 a.m. Like sometimes I'm like in and out of consciousness during these games. But let me see. Let me see. Do they have a scoreboard? I'll try to bring a scoreboard up. So JDG was blue side. JDG had Renekton, Lilia, Zoe. Oh, I did watch a lot of this game. Yeah, so you gave Yagao his, like, best champion. Yagao can compete with Knight when he's playing Zoe. So probably not the best champion to give away. It was 21-8. I think that at one point at one point Han Sama was 4-0, which was pretty funny, just cleaning up kills. But even when Han Sama was 4-0, they were down a couple thousand gold, which is it's difficult to realize you're losing a game when you have an 80 carry that's 4-0. So they probably felt pretty good about themselves for a lot of it, but when they watch the tape, I think they'll have a much different opinion of how the game was going. And they had Lumao was on Bard, which is one of his best champions. Kanavi was on Lilia, one of the champions that Kanavi plays extremely well, because Kanavi plays basically everything really well. So yeah, that's. I mean, they were saying on the cast that Rogue, like, if Rogue wants a chance of getting out of the group, they have to beat JDG tonight. It's like, okay, well, they're not going to. So, like, why are you trying to hype this game up? JDG is one of the two best teams from China. Maybe Rogue can't beat them. They have a hard enough time with teams from Europe, let alone JDG. You know what I mean? So then we had FlyQuest against Unicorns of Love. Unicorns of Love and FlyQuest was a very close match. During the draft phase, and during the early game, Renekton was getting dominated. But during some, like, conversations before the game started, I was talking to some people in Discord, and the subject of Renekton came up. Let me see if I can find where that was yesterday. Sorry. But basically, after the game, before the game started, people were asking me like, what do I think about Renekton, and my comment was basically like, Renekton is a good champion because even when Renekton is losing, he has the ability to do his job in the game. So Waco Kid asked, non-DFS related question. I hear your videos and a lot of champions come up, but I don't hear a lot of depth on Renekton, but I hear the casters say how he's bad late game. Just wanted to get your thought on that champion. What are his strengths and weaknesses? I said he's fine. Can snowball, which means like get out of control during the game, like get a little bit of a lead and it snowballs into a giant lead. Is hyper mobile, so because of Slice and Dice, he is very mobile during team fights. He has innate tankiness from his ult, so he gets additional health, and then an easy build path that helps him perform his role. Even when he's losing, he can dive the back line and wreak havoc. So if you have a playmaker top lane who has killer instincts that can get into the back line to make plays around dragons or barons, then it's good. And most teams aren't willing to play the good counters against it, which we actually saw in the last game of the night where DRX played Quinn into it, and the Quinn was winning like it's supposed to. But eventually the game just slipped away from DRX. I think DRX proved last night that they can definitely compete with top esports. The draft was an interesting way to go about beating top esports. I think that they definitely had chances to finish off the game, but the execution at the end wasn't great. And the range difference between Senna and Draven just became untenable. So a lot of people were asking like, why even pick Draven? Draven is something that, again, can snowball out of control. So if you're able to punish Senna in laning phase, then you can build up this gigantic lead where it becomes very difficult for her to farm. But it was a very interesting game. That one was a very interesting game overall. But going back to the FlyQuest against Unicorns of Love game, the reason I was making that point is because Renekton was getting destroyed and still did his job in the late game by getting in to start some fights. And that's really all you can ask for from your players, is to do their job when they're losing. So that's basically that. Let's take a look at tomorrow's games. So G2 against Team Liquid. I think that Team Liquid can beat G2. Worst teams have beaten G2 this year. The question is, can Team Liquid beat a good G2? And in a best of one, the answer is still yes, but it's pretty unlikely. At plus 291, I think that you can get away with betting on that. I don't think that G2 looks unbeatable by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that's another spot where I'm going to look to potentially have some kind of parlay tonight. Suning against Machi. I'm not betting against Suning. DRX and FlyQuest. I'm not betting against DRX. Top Esports against Unicorns of Love. Definitely not betting against Top Esports. But we're getting to the point where these upsets feel kind of inevitable. So Fnatic against Gen G. I'm not playing Fnatic against Gen G. If that beats me, whatever. I can't get too upset about it. TSM against LGD. I'm a big LGD fan. I could see TSM taking a game off of LGD because LGD has some serious lapses in macro and playing the game the right way. So that doesn't necessarily mean I think that LGD is going to, or it doesn't mean that I think TSM is going to have a ridiculous DraftKings performance. If anybody was going to have a crazy DraftKings performance, I would think it's LGD. And the reason I think that is because this game could be similar to what TSM has done against 100 Thieves. So I'll probably have some kind of round robin parlay with Team Liquid. I'll check it with G2 as well, but like Team Liquid, Suning, DRX, Top Esports, Gen G, TSM, or maybe switch LGD and TSM and G2 and Team Liquid. But I'm probably going to do some combination of those teams. I'm tempted to have Unicorns of Love in there just like as a crazy bet, just like a $10 bet or something like that, with a parlay with multiple underdogs paired together. I know it's not a high percentage play, but you almost have to bet on some of these upsets soon, and you have to look for reasons why it might happen. I think Unicorns of Love is likely to take a similar approach, to take the same approach that DRX did, where they have an interesting draft with like some unique champions. So that's kind of it tonight. So let me try to make the case for a few of the underdogs. So if Team Liquid beats G2, it will be similar to, let's take a look at G2's match history, and I'll give you a comparison of what kind of team beats them. So, like Origin. So G2 lost to Origin. So if Origin can beat G2, then Team Liquid can beat G2. Okay, so when they lost to Origin, that was the first game that Perkz came back onto the stage, so Perkz was just not playing well. I would try to put Perkz onto a champion that he's not comfortable with right now, which it's tough to say what he is and is not comfortable on. I definitely wouldn't let him play Ezreal. I'd make him play something immobile that I could attack with Hard Engage. That's probably how I would try to do it. And like I said, I don't think it's likely that Team Liquid wins, but I'm fine betting on that outcome. I think that the number's pretty good. Suning against Machi. I'm not making an argument for Machi. DRX FlyQuest, I'm not doing that. Top Esports Unicorns of Love, I just explained how I thought that one might happen, which is very unlikely. Fnatic against G2, or Fnatic against Gen G. I mean, what Fnatic would have to do is draft a team composition similar to what KT Rolster did against Gen G at the end of last season, where KT picked like Vel'Koz mid and played around Dragon specifically, and just the winning that game was dependent on Gen G fighting a Dragon where they're kind of not the stronger team because of innate champion kits and not necessarily like the economy of the game. And then TSM against LGD, like I said, LGD has some games where they have very questionable macro. So I think TSM just drafts a team composition that can go even in the laning phase and then tries to fight around a couple of Dragons. LGD has thrown away games at Dragons this month. So that's about it. The last thing I would say in regards to the Renekton hatred is that LS has a very specific view of League of Legends, which is completely fine. Everybody can have their own opinions on League of Legends and like what's important and what's not important. But League of Legends is such a young game in terms of like game theory and knowledge that LS, and I'm probably guilty of this as well, treats it like the game is solved sometimes, and it's definitely not solved, and he wouldn't say that it's solved either. But he says things like Renekton is bad, here's how you beat it, but that is like, it doesn't really it's not the only thing that matters, because it's similar to chess. Like in chess there are lines, which is like a set of moves that is known to both players, and then at some point in the match teams like the player will deviate from the known line, and that is where a champion like Renekton is kind of still strong, even though LS has created this line to this point. Once you get into like the 30-minute mark and Renekton is up 2 kills and has like a little bit of an edge in economy or something, and then you get into another team fight, like even though the earlier part of the game suggests that Renekton should have been punished in the draft phase and like shouldn't have gotten that lead, there's ways to outplay it and outplay your opponent. And I agree that's not the mentality you should have. You should be trying to create edges in the early game, But even in that scenario, you could just have the one team call it a gambit and be like, yeah, like we know that eventually we could get outscaled in this situation, or that they could pick ban around it, but our move forces their move, and then we can react again. So it's not like we're dead in the water because we picked Renekton first overall on blue side. Maybe that wasn't the most coherent explanation of that, but I think that it's relatively. I think that you probably understand what I'm trying to say. And if you don't, feel free to leave me a comment, and I'll try again later. But I'm a little tired from work today. So that's it. That's all I got for you. Good luck to everybody on DraftKings. Let's root for some underdogs tonight. It'll be a lot more interesting to watch. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.